Well, thanks for coming. Appreciate it. Not too long ago, the family of Tamir Rice filed a lawsuit, a complaint against the city of Cleveland for the death of Tamir Rice. And we, on Friday, answered that complaint, that filing. And in doing so, we, in an attempt to protect all of our defenses, we use words and we phrase things in such a way that was very insensitive to the tragedy in general, the family, and the victim in particular. And is not part of the character of the city of Cleveland and this administration. So we are apologizing today as a city to the family of Tamir Rice and to the citizens of the city of Cleveland for our poor use of words and our insensitivity in the use of those words. Our law department will be filing an amended complaint, amended answer to the complaint that will deal with the insensitivity of the language and the characterization that we use, but also at the same time preserve the defense and the right that we have to a defense, that if we do not assert it in our answer, we will lose that defense. So again, to the citizens of the city of Cleveland in general, but particularly to the family of Tamir Rice, and we are sincerely apologetic for our misuse and mischaracterization of our answer to that complaint. Barb.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's cases like this that make it difficult to be a lawyer, and we're in a legal process and we think like lawyers. However, as the mayor said, we appreciate that the words we use were insensitive, and we're very, very sorry for any offense that people took or for the hurt that they may feel because of that insensitivity. That is why we'll be refiling an answer. We are preserving our defenses, as the mayor said, but we will be changing our language. Thank you. Sure. Langhenry, Langhenry. It's all one word.
And you're the lead counsel?
I'm the law director, yes.
So who was responsible for the language?
Well, our lawyers answered the complaint.
Are they being disciplined?
No.
Well, so that I can answer that. As you may imagine, the city of Cleveland is sued many times. And some of those suits are involving loss of life. And as a result of that, the law department and their attorneys answer those complaints, and they answer them in a way that becomes routine. But again, we recognize that in this case, it was inappropriate, and that the way in which it was answered was insensitive. And that is why we are here today to apologize for something that was not intended to happen. But even though it was not intended to happen, as the law director said, it did bring hurt to some people, and I believe to the community at large, but the family in particular. And that is not our intent, not our intent.
You believe the language was insensitive, but do you agree with the premise of what it said?
There in law, if the law director can correct me, when you answer a complaint, you have to assert certain defenses. If you do not assert those defenses, then you lose those opportunity. You lose that opportunity in court. So there's always a way in which you can assert a defense and use language in a way that that's appropriate for the situation and is not insensitive to people.
I'm sorry, Tom. Can you clarify that? I'm not sure I got quite the answer. Do you agree with what the premise was, but not how it was said?
The court will decide whether or not any premise, whether the complaint itself against the city or the answers that we give to the complaint. The court will decide whether or not it's true or not. In a legal process, in order to preserve defenses, you have to assert them. And in a complaint, I imagine that in order to assert a certain thing, and if that's the way you want, you have to assert it. You can't just do that later on. So in that regard, the court will make those kind of decisions.
So let's assume that the verbiage was inartful or insensitive. What would be the correct way to state what you wanted to say?
We will determine that if we have so many days to amend the complaint.
Was that particular phrase, that sort of perfunctory or pro forma, or just the language you use in a typical case?
That was typical language, yes.
Are you now considering changing that in other cases? Because this is a really high-profile case, but there are other victims, potentially who could come forward and feel equally as offended.
We answer complaints based on the circumstances of the case, and so we'd have to look at the circumstances of future cases.
Even though you wouldn't use that particular phrase again, will you still attempt to assert that the events of what happened to a degree happened because of Tamir Rice's actions?
Well, again, that's what Mr. Freeman was asking, the same question. And so I'll give you the same answer. We will continue to assert a defense and use language that is appropriate. Now, that is up for the lawyers to decide as to what that language in particular will be, and it's up to the court to decide whether or not our assertion, or their assertion is correct or not. That is part of the legal process.
When
We
did you
ran that
decide
story
that-
this weekend that you did, put something out on Friday, and we ran it. And I don't remember the exact quote, but it was that Tamir caused his own death.
I think that's the general
That's
principle.
not what it
That's the general principle that people derive from it. But if you want him to read it, and then you can get the exact language.
We'd love to, we've asked for it twice.
The complaint
We'd
is,
love to see it.
the complaint is,
Before this stuff is on file,
exactly.
so you could just go anywhere and pick it up. But she can read the
Okay, that'd be
actual
great,
language.
thank you.
Yeah.
How long do you have to amend that?
21 days.
At least 21 days. The answer to the complaint is on file in the case, and it's all publicly accessible through the federal court's website. But there were we asserted 20 affirmative defenses when we answered the complaint. The language that's been picked up by the media was contained in 3 of them, and I'll just read the first one. They're all very similar. Plaintiffs' decedents' injuries, losses, and damages complained of were directly and proximately caused by the failure of plaintiff's decedent to exercise due care to avoid injury. There are legal principles that are asserted in the answer to complaints, and we understand how that can be perceived as
So the underlying objective here was just to protect the city to the utmost.
That is correct. Answers are filed very early in proceedings. There's the complaint and then the answer, and then you move into the discovery process, and that's when true facts come out. So when it's this early, we preserve all of our defenses if we have a basis for preserving those.
When did you decide that the language was insensitive? Was it after Tamir Rice's family released their statement, or when did you decide we shouldn't have worded it like this?
Well, I can answer that. Is when I found out about it. And that was this morning. I came in and asked Dan as to what is this and why, what happened here. And then I talked to the director around 8:30 this morning, and she explained to me exactly what she explained to you about the complaint, the answer, and how you preserve your defenses. And so what we did then was I said to them, then we owe people an apology.
So it's safe to say this came from you. When you saw the language, you're the one who said, hey,
This is not the character or personality of the city of Cleveland. This is not to be that insensitive to family or even to victims. It's not our character or personality. And so once it became known to me that this had happened, then we immediately went to how can we correct this in terms of the hurt, as Barb said, the family may have as a result of this, and also the impression that Cleveland is this insensitive place when in fact that's not our character. We don't We don't do these kind of things to hurt people.
Particularly upsetting to you having spent a good amount of time on Friday trying to convince the media and the community that you're aware of the problems and have done and are doing your best to fix the problems. And then simultaneously, a lot of departments over putting this in the in basket. I mean, do you think they think that undid a lot of the positive?
Well, that's for you to determine in the public. That's for you to determine in the public. Right now, my sole concern is the fact that we did something that, as the law director said, is hurtful to the family, that is disrespectful to them and the victim, as well as to the citizens of the city of Cleveland. All of you are citizens. And I know you don't want to be viewed in that type of light, neither do I. And so that's what this is about today. Now, how this other stuff relates on Friday, that's another world for me and another situation. I'm talking about right here today, that we are sincerely sorry for what happened, even though it was not intended.
Not to put blame or anything, but I know you folks have proper channels.
Right.
So whoever the lawyer was that wrote it, who was the final person to give the release?
Well, there's a series of stuff. Now, if you want to, there's a process to everything. And the lawyer who did it didn't do anything intentionally. The lawyer who did it according to the way they answer lawsuits. And it was nothing intentional of that. Now, of course, it goes up the chain. It goes up the chain.
So Barb, you would have been the final approval for that to be released?
Yes.
Mayor, so if this is normal language that's used in lawsuits that would have never come to your attention, I'm assuming, unless it was a high-profile case, so how do you go forward now? Do you change that language, or is it just because it got so much
Well, that's the
attention?
question. That was the question that was asked over here. As the director said, we'll do case-by-case stuff. The general premise is that we do not want to be in the mode of blaming the victim, of demonization. We don't want to be in that mode. So if the appropriate thing to do as we analyze it and the lawyers look at it, if they deem that there's another way to preserve a defense other than this language, then we'll use it. So we will rely on our lawyers to, in that regard. We have, as she said, 21 days to amend this complaint.
Mayor, some of you, obviously, I mean, you care deeply for your city.
Right.
What now? I mean, seeing how much attention this has gotten nationally, or what are you thinking now?
Well, I'm not thinking, believe me, young lady, believe me, I could care less about that. What I care about right now is that the family of Tamir Rice and the people of the city of Cleveland understand and realize that we are sorry for what we have done and that we apologize to them. Now, how the rest of the world perceive us, you know, it will be what it is, and a lot of that will come from you. So I'm not concerned as much about that now than I am about the family of Tamir Rice and the people of the city of Cleveland. That's what I'm concerned about right now.
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, but I imagine in many cases, there's sometimes tough and insensitive language in responses to lawsuits. And does this, in changing language, do you feel this in any way diminishes the city's position on this case?
The quick answer is no. But the quick answer is no. Because they have a fiduciary responsibility, and so do I, to represent the city and protect the interests of the city. That's why you have a process. And it starts off, as the director says, on the extreme on both ends, and then as the process works itself, it gets to some point where the judge will rule whether or not one defense or another is appropriate or not. But if you don't assert it, you can't claim it down the road. So that's...
Yeah, we will assert all of our available defenses and aggressively represent the interests of the city, because that's our responsibility.
Hundreds of emails, calls, and can you give us a number? Did it come to the law office? Did it come to the mayor's office?
Well, I imagine there was people who called. I don't know because I didn't check it. I know that you called my media person. I know that much. And I can imagine that Blaine, Community Relations, I can imagine he got called. I imagine even council may have gotten some calls on it. I have not gotten a call personally on it. I have not.
But you got a call from, obviously, Tamir Rice's attorney stating that he was wrong? No, you haven't heard from the family then?
No, I have not talked to the family. I have communicated with their spokesperson about our sincere apologies for what happened. We've done that, but no, we didn't. I didn't get a direct call. I don't think you got a direct call from anybody. No.
You say their spokesperson. Who are you referring to?
I don't know his name. I forgot his name.
Walter T. Mass.
Yeah, right. He represents, who he represents, but he was. I think he was gracious in understanding and accepting and communicating to the family our apologies for this.
And again, just to make it clear, you're apologizing for what was said in the lawsuit, not for what happened in November at Cadell Rec Center.
I believe that I'm on record in regards to what happened at Cadell. There is no way that a 12-year-old should die. So I'm on record for that. And so again, today is about apologizing to the family in who we have caused some hurt, some harm to in that regard, and to the people of the city of Cleveland as to what happened and how it happened. Whether or not we can explain it away is irrelevant. That's not important to me. What's important to me, it happened. And so we have to correct what I believe has been a wrong.
I've heard a lot of kind of legal talk here, but I'm not clear whether the city still believes that Tamir Rice's actions caused his harm.
We're not going to try the case here. We're not going to do that. What we're saying to you is we're going to assert all defenses that are available to us. Whether or not any of our assertions of a defense is going to be followed through on or deemed to be correct or not, the court and the system will decide. We're not trying that here. I'm here to say to you and say to the people and say to the family that we're sorry. We apologize. We were wrong in our insensitive way in which we handled this, even though there was no one in particular and no one throughout the system who had any malice in this whatsoever. But it happened. And because it happened, we owe the people and the family an apology.
Mayor, it's clear that you take this case to heart.
Yes.
Obviously it's a 12-year-old child, but you have kids, you have grandkids. It has to hit close to home.
I got a 12-year-old grandson who's about that tall. Wears size 12s. That I think about all the time. I have an 18-year-old grandson and a 9-year-old and a 3-year-old. And it's difficult for me to imagine that. Okay, thank you.